Let's take a deep dive into the making of Disciples in the Moonlight. This is part 2 of our interview with Brett Varvel, and we're going to talk about production stories, obstacles and creative problem solving, the team's dedication and mentoring new filmmakers. We'll also talk about discipleship and personal and spiritual growth in the filmmaking process. We want to remind you that all of the episodes that were formerly exclusive members episodes have been opened up to all listeners. And this part 2 of Brett's interview is available to you today because exclusive members episodes have been discontinued. If you do want to support the production of this podcast, you can simply go to faffpodcast.com/support and leave a tip.
This is the Faith and Family Filmmakers podcast, helping filmmakers who share a Christian worldview stay in touch, informed, and inspired. Quiet on set. Rolling. Your hosts, Geoffrey and Jaclyn Whitt.
Welcome to the Faith and Family Filmmakers podcast. My name is Jaclyn. Jeff is here with me today, and we've got Brett Varvel with us on the podcast. And we have been talking about Disciples in the Moonlight. And I know that it's coming out in theaters in the U.S. Do you have plans for distribution beyond the United States?
We do, and I'm so excited about this because when we were making the movie, we wanted to be serving God's story here, and we wanted to see God doing the work and not us fabricating a deal or anything like that when it came to distribution. And we prayed fervently for the right partner to join us, and that was Pinnacle Peak Pictures. And they bought into the vision of this movie, and so
nice.
we will be not only coming out in theaters, but then we're going to be coming out in home entertainment here in the United States shortly after, and eventually we'll go to streaming and things like that. But because Pinnacle Peak Pictures has a global reach, they secured us a spot at the Cannes International Film Festival recently, where we were able to screen the movie to international buyers.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was our first chance to talk to international territories about picking up the movie after it's had its theatrical run here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And we're very excited about some of the prospects. I can't speak yet to the specific territories that it's going to be playing in across the world, but we do know that some of the, there are some of the normal faith-based hotspots where the movie will land. And that excites me because this movie is centered around these characters in Indiana and the Midwest. I didn't know how that would translate to an international audience. But with the thought-provoking question in our tagline, what if the Bible was illegal? That is a universal conversation.
Yes,
exactly. And it's something that I think what we saw at Cannes was that people were really interested in exploring that question and seeing how our characters responded. And so the moment that we have more updates, we'll definitely be posting on our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube about where the movie will be going out.
Nice.
Across the pond, so to speak.
Yeah.
And we're very excited about the international reach of this movie.
Definitely. That is super exciting. And I think it's one of those things we always want for our project, right? Like just go out into the world and touch people's hearts that I won't even know that it touched until we get to heaven.
Right. Exactly.
So let's talk a little more about the production process. I know there's probably lots of stories, hiccups, things to overcome, funny stories, and maybe some things you learned that might be advice for others.
Yeah, I think the thing that I could start with the advice because it's something that the Lord really worked overtime on me with giving up control and really coming to this place of daily surrender when it came to this project. Constantly realizing that this story doesn't belong to me. This project doesn't belong to me. I'm a steward of it. God has entrusted me to shepherd it, but ultimately it's His. And if it's not His, is it really worth making? And so that's the question that I would challenge anyone to examine when they're approaching any project, is to ask yourself first, am I making this for the Lord's glory? Is it really His? And am I just stewarding this? And that's a good place to be, because some of the most challenging moments of this project, in years past would have sent me into a complete tailspin. But realizing that I'm not in control here, the Lord has already worked these scenarios out. I have to prayerfully consider how He's working. You end up discovering something better. And actually, one of the cool stories I could share is day 3 of production. We were at a house where we were shooting all day. And we're shooting this incredibly intense argument scene between Josh Strakowski and Stephanie Parker. And it was a scene that I was, so jazzed up to be capturing. And out of the corner of my eye, I see some of my producers talking, and they don't look happy.
Oh, no.
And so, alarm bells just start going off in my mind. And I'm thinking, oh, great, what's going on? And they pulled me aside and they said, hey, the location that we had for tomorrow is gone. Their lawyers came back and said we can't shoot there.
Oh, man.
And then we were going to be there all night. So thankfully we got our team together and people started praying, and we just trusted that the Lord was going to solve this problem for us. We needed to be diligent to do the work, but we started praying. And after a few phone calls, the Lord directed us to a hallway that was just outside of this. So we were supposed to be shooting inside of the police station that we wanted to be filming in. But there was this hallway that was just outside of it that the lawyers said was okay if we wanted to shoot there. And sure enough, wouldn't you know it, that location was way better of a location than what we had actually scouted and prepped and planned beforehand. And so the anxiety started to, reduce, and we ended up capturing what ended up becoming just an unbelievable scene that happens at a very, very important moment in the movie. And moments like that happened a lot throughout production. Being a low-budget independent film, you're calling on a lot of favors. You're asking people to go the extra mile and think outside the box, outside the limitations of the budget. I mean, one of the very first conversations I had with my director of photography and my gaffer was the fact that we have all these night exterior scenes. I mean, it's called Disciples in the Moonlight. So we got to really, capture that feel. And our budget was really kind of dwindling in terms of being able to create these big Hollywood night exteriors. And so we started thinking outside the box. And one of my producers, Van Lawson, was driving home one night, and he passed one of his neighbor's house, and they had just started this tree trimming service. And they had this huge truck with this gigantic arm with a bucket, at the top of it. Because we had looked into renting a lift. And the trouble is that you have to haul it to and from each location, which just gets insanely expensive. And so we reached out to this guy's neighbor and said, hey, can we rent your truck from you? Good thing is it's on wheels, so it can go to all your locations. It can get high enough in the sky to give you that, bathed in moonlight look. And it was a fraction of the cost.
Oh,
and
nice.
Just so like those moments of thinking outside the box was just so incredible to see my team take the limitations and not be afraid of the limitations, but to press through it and find an even better solution than we could have even dreamt from the beginning. And I think that goes back to what I said earlier about seeking to give up control, surrendering and trusting instead of having to, constantly have it my way, so to speak. So those are a few of the stories. I'm sure I could share more.
Yeah, well,
I'm sure that's especially true with regards to control and whatnot. When those things happen in the midst of things, it's one thing way in advance for something to fall through. It's another thing when you're in the middle of a shoot on one day and the problem exists the following day.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not easy.
Yeah, I think one of the other things I could share about the production experience was that this was a tough one. We had a 25-day shoot where 17 days out of the 25 were overnight shoots.
Oh, interesting.
And that was something that we knew going into it was going to be a grueling process. Right. And we were very upfront with all of our cast and crew, like, buckle up, like, this is going to be tough. And the thing that was such a blessing to me was the smiles on people's faces at 4 a.m, 6 a.m, after, shooting for 10 hours. And that they were tired, they were exhausted, but they didn't give up. They were committed. And I think it was because everybody had bought into the idea of what this could be.
Right.
Yeah.
And, in moments when it was tempting to compromise with the quality, everybody pushed through that extra mile to get that extra take to make sure it was going to be done right. And it shows in the presentation of this movie. And that's just a testimony to these people who they put out their heart and soul into this thing. And I told them we had a local premiere here in Indianapolis. And one of the things that I was thanking my cast and crew about, or my crew specifically, was that the audience will not notice their work. They won't notice how hard it was to get that C-stand standing in the corner. They won't notice how many wardrobe changes had to go into that specific shoot day. They won't notice, how hard it was to place the props or the set dressing in the background. And the fact that the audience doesn't notice means that they did their job in an excellent way.
Exactly, yeah.
And I wanted them to know that, and I think this is an encouragement for our listeners to consider, just because an audience may not see your work or understand that it was you that was doing that, the Lord sees you.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord sees the tireless, the amount of hours that you put into these types of projects. And when you are serving him, he is very well pleased. And that's what this is all about, bringing honor and glory to the Lord and not being praised by men.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And so that was something that was just so encouraging to see these people come together and doing it for the Lord's glory and not for their own.
Amen.
The Faith and Family Summer Screenwriting Bootcamp is coming up on July 28th. 3 live online masterclasses in one day. Learn how to polish your screenplay with Jaclyn Whitt. Write deeper characters with biblical techniques with Sean Gaffney. And write to produce your own story with George Escobar. It's a rare thing to advance your screenwriting skills this much in one day. Go to FAFFassociation.com or click the link in the show notes and register today for the Faith and Family Summer Screenwriting Bootcamp.
Did you have any beginner filmmakers on set for this project?
I did, and they were such blessings. So one of the things that very early in my career, I realized that I went to a traditional, university for my undergrad to learn the film production process. And I realized within my first couple classes that a textbook and a professor is not going to be able to teach me this craft. I got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when friends of mine were off partying, on the weekend, I was making movies. And I was trying to figure out the craft and take what I was learning in the classroom and put it into practice and make mistakes and all of these things. And so anytime that I am around aspiring filmmakers or beginners, I try to challenge them as often and as able as you can, get on a film set.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's making your own movie, whether it's getting on someone else's movie, even if that means working for free.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
The lessons that you learn by doing the craft are far more valuable than anything that you could learn online or in a textbook.
Right.
And I was very intentional about having some of our production assistants who have never, they've never been on a film set before, and bringing them on board to learn the various aspects of the filmmaking process. And what was so cool was by the end of the production experience, several of them were trying to get poached by other departments. So, the camera department wants this guy because he's great, but the grip department also wants that person, and it was just cool. Like, these are never made a movie before in their life, and they're getting poached by these seasoned veterans.
Awesome.
But that's I think the incubator film camp experience that a production experience can provide. And it was just really cool to see these people shine. And then now to see them go outside of Disciples in the Moonlight, they're making their own movies or they're getting on other people's projects. And I'm a firm believer in the fact that, Hollywood would say that making it in this business is all about who you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to turn that on its head based on Matthew chapter 22, where Jesus gets confronted with the question, what's the greatest commandment? And this back and forth culminates in this moment where Jesus teaches that it's to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's not about who you know, it's about how you can serve and how you can love.
Mm-hmm.
And not to use people to get where you want to be in your career, but to honestly seek, how can I serve these people?
Right.
Because when that happens, inevitably, and this happens like 100% of the time, your name's going to get passed around and people are going to say, hey, you need to hire this person. Yeah. They were incredible to have on our film set. They're not only a hard worker, but that, good person to be around, all of these intangibles that are not necessarily talent-based, but really have a lot to do with your ability to get onto other projects. So yeah, my advice to people is even if you got to sleep on a couch in the beginning phase, do whatever you got to do to get on those film sets, because you're gonna learn two things, I think. One, you're gonna discover if you're cut out for this business.
Yes, there's that.
This is a really, really challenging thing. I mean, 10 to 12-hour days is the norm now. And, you're not always guaranteed a great work environment. And the question becomes, how badly do you want this?
Yeah.
But then secondly, once you discovered if you are up for this challenge and if you really are cut out for this type of work, you're going to discover by working on a film set where you're more gifted. I've met so many people who started out wanting to be a director, but they discovered they really want to be in the sound department, or whatever, or they discovered they wanted to be in the camera department or whatever the case would be. Or I've even had a lot of my actor friends. I mean, a lot of us actors have to be kind of dual threats. We have to be able to do something other than just act. So many friends of mine have discovered like they love being in the makeup department, or they love being in the grip and gaff department. And so being able to diversify yourself only comes from doing it. And also, I would say this as an encouragement to those that are directors and producers: be willing to bring on talent that has never been on a film set before. Some of the coolest, most rewarding moments at our wrap party was looking into the eyes of these young people who came onto my film set and just seeing the tears in their eyes, that they felt like they had found their calling in life.
Yeah.
And to know that you're a part of that is a really cool example of being the body of Christ.
Yeah.
And so it was just an incredible experience to have these younger people on our film set.
Yeah, it's discipleship.
Yeah, it is discipleship. It's exciting to be able to make art with other people, like to collaborate. There's just something special and unique about that. But I love what you were saying too about giving new people a chance, because in the first interview, you were saying how you were hoping that someone would give you a chance. And so, yeah, it does come back to that scripture when Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, yeah, I want a chance. And therefore, when I have the opportunity to give others a chance, I want to take it.
Exactly. And that's been the story of my life. I mean, I came from the west side of Indianapolis, not a city known for making movies, never moved out to LA or to Georgia or anywhere, some of the hotbeds of making movies. And I was really dependent on some people to take a chance on me, to take that risk, and to be able to be in this position now where the Lord has entrusted me, this story to tell and to get it out in theaters and potentially across the world is a reflection of the people who saw something enough and said, the Lord's going to use this and I want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And not only treating your neighbor as yourself, but the discipleship aspect of this, to see that, older coming alongside the younger and to train and really learning the craft is one thing. We could talk for days about filmmaking, and there's so many aspects to this art form that are just limitless. But the spiritual connotation of the film set, you find out who you are really quick on a film set. You find out your heart struggles.
Yes.
And to be able to come alongside people and encourage them in their walk with Christ, or potentially even lead them to the Lord for the first time, is something that should not be lost on our film sets. We should take these opportunities to nurture and spur one another on toward the Lord, because that's what's most important beyond any movie we could ever make.
So Brett, one more time, let's tell our listeners about the release of Disciples in the Moonlight and where they can see it and what links you have that they can go find.
Yeah, so you can go see Disciples in the Moonlight July 17th through the 24th, and you can go get your tickets now at fathomevents.com/events/Disciples in the Moonlight. And there you can put your zip code in, select the day that you want to go see the movie, put your zip code in, you'll see all the theaters that are around you. And here's the other thing that I would encourage people: if you don't see your theater listed, contact Fathom and let them know that you would like them to pick up that specific theater, and then go a step further and encourage your local theater to pick it up. We really kind of depend at this point in time on the audience demanding that the movie be seen. We're an independent film, and so we know we don't have the reach that a lot of studio films have. And so if this is a movie that you think you want to see, and I can tell you from firsthand experience from seeing audiences' reactions to this movie, this is a movie that will intensely touch your heart and challenge and inspire you. And I think it's a movie that will also just be a thrill to see at the box office. And so go to fathomevents.com, get your tickets today. Go to disciplesinthemoonlightmovie.com for more updates, and then follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and X.
Perfect.
We'll get those links in the show notes. And
Perfect.
I think beyond the inspiration and challenge of the movie. I think there's been some challenge and some inspiration today as well in talking about it from the background, from the process.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciate the time you've spent with us.
Absolutely.
And the time you spent for our listeners. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
God bless.
God bless. Thanks for listening to the Faith and Family Filmmakers podcast. If you would like email reminders about newly released episodes and more, please sign up at faffpodcast.com/email. That's faffpodcast.com/email. Bringing filmmakers together for faith and family.
That's a wrap.